Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to go over some components that could cause catastrophic damage without any warning. So these catastrophic damage happens to the most expensive components in the cars, such as the transmission as well as the engine. And they kind of don't give you a heads up when they fail. They just fail just because how they are designed. All right, so we're gonna start with number one here. So it is going to be the radiator. So why the radiator? Because the radiator is with the internal transmission cooler. So if you look closer over here, these two holes here are going to be the inlet fluid, the inlet side for the transmission fluid, and then the bottom is probably going to be the outlet fluid for the transmission fluid. So they have a heat exchanger in there that kind of looks like this. All right. So that's why it's problematic, because that heat exchanger could fail internally inside and crack. And then you have transmission fluid mixing with the coolant. But the worst part is going to be the coolant going inside the transmission. And then that's just catastrophic damage. So by the time you know that coolant got into the transmission, it's probably going to be too late. So it's going to eat up all the clutches and then contaminate all the transmission fluid. So, and then when the cooling gets when the transmission fluid gets into the coolant, it damages all the hoses and reduces the efficiency of the cooling, the cooling the cooling efficiency of the coolant. So the damage that happens to the hoses are going to be swollen up hoses and so on. So it's going to be a complete overhaul of either the cooling system or the transmission, or vice versa. So either you have the setup like this with the heat exchanger inside the transmission, or you have an external heat exchanger like this. And these are problematic as well because inside they could crack. On the inside they could crack, and then transmission, the coolant that's coming in here could mix with the transmission that's coming in here, getting cooled, and then finding its way back here. So this could also happen in fluid coolers, such as the oil coolers. So a mix of coolant and oil could also happen. Sometimes you're lucky to catch it early enough where it doesn't cause too much damage to either your engine. But in this case as well, in this scenario here, so if you're too late, and then if you're too late to catch it, then say goodbye to that transmission. It's going to be a transmission overhaul, so around 2000 or 1500, depending on depending on your transmission and the shop that you choose to get it serviced at. So the solution, the solution for this problem is you're gonna have to replace these components prematurely. Say if the car is getting up there in age, like at 5, 6, or even 7 years old, and you still don't have that problem, then it's a good time to go ahead and replace these components, because there's no telling the condition of the heat exchanger inside the radiator. So you're gonna have to open up the radiator and actually see. But if ever it cracks while driving, then right away you'll have coolant getting sucked into the heat exchanger, into the transmission, and so on. Transmission fluid getting sucked into the cooling system. So you would have to change those prematurely just to avoid that problem. All right, number two, we have a fuel injector, but especially the GDI fuel injectors, so the gasoline direct injection. So these are shooting high pressure fuel around 1500 to 2200 psi. It just really depends on the car. And the problem that can happen with these is if they're stuck open. So that's the worst case scenario, if they're stuck open. And then this is kind of the scenario that happens. So it's going to wash down completely the cylinder walls. So when that happens, there's no more oil. There's no more oil on the cylinder walls where the piston can use it as friction. So you're going to damage the cylinder walls while doing that. It's going to go all the way down to the oil pan and contaminate the oil. And then when you have diluted oil and contaminated oil, you'll have bearing damage. And then finally, it's raw fuel that's unburnt and finding its way into the exhaust system is going to damage the catalytic converter. So, because especially if this one is stuck open, then you still have the GDI pump that's still pumping this amount of pressure, or a bit less, just because it's stuck open. But you're constantly pumping this amount of pressure, and you know, by the time you figure out that you have a stuck open fuel injector, so either it's gonna misfire heavily, and you're probably gonna see some white smoke coming out your tailpipe. But most of the time, you're gonna be way too late to avoid any of these damages. So contaminated oil, cylinder walls washing, and so on. And you're probably going to damage the catalytic converter, which is going to cause PO 420 codes and PO 430 codes. And to fix all that, you're going to have to replace the catalytic converter, which is $1,000 plus, depending on your car, obviously. So this is going to be the worst case scenario: a stuck open fuel injector. So to avoid this problem, it's going to be similar to the other components. So if they're getting up there in age, 5, 6, 7 years old, and you're at 150,000 kilometers or so on, 200,000, then it's a good idea to just replace them preventively, just to avoid this catastrophic damage. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen to some cars. It happens often in diesel trucks with as well as direct fuel injection. So yeah, this scenario is a possibility if you have a GDI engine. I'm not saying it's going to happen to you, but I'm just saying you'd be watch out for that scenario here. All right, lastly, it's going to be timing belts and timing change. So some car owners will leave the timing belt untouched and neglect their maintenance, as well as these pulleys here. So if any of these pulleys let go, or if this timing change let go, and you have interference engine, then you're going to cause straight away catastrophic damage. The pistons are going to hit the valves, and then yeah, it's going to be a complete engine overhaul. So that's why it's recommended to replace, if you do have a timing belt, it's recommended to replace it at 100,000 kilometers as preventive maintenance. You could push it to 150. Yeah, you could push it to 150, but it's every manufacturer is going to recommend this is kind of the mileage to do it at. So 100,000 kilometers, just to avoid any catastrophic damage to your engine, because you don't know which one is going to go first. So either the idler pulley, the tensioner, or the timing belt. So just to avoid any of these damages, replace it preventively. And same thing applies, but to the timing chain. So if you have a timing chain set up like this, with this is the tensioner, the chains, and so on, the guides here could also break and cause chain to be loose, and chain slap as well. So this one, usually the timing chains don't snap. It's very rare that they snap, but they do stretch. So timing chain stretch, and they'll cause either misfire codes and so on that you'll have to pay a mechanic to chase. So 2 hours of labor just for him to diagnose that there is a timing chain stretch that is causing timing codes. Okay, and it's very rare that they do snap, but if they do snap as well, it's going to be the same scenario as the timing belt, which is if you do have interference engine, then the pistons and the valves are going to contact, and then they're going to damage each other. So either they're probably for sure going to bend the valve and then damage the piston head. So you would have to do another engine overhaul for that one as well. So that's worst case scenario. So for timing chains, you could push the maintenance on those. You know, you could go up to 200,000 before replacing those. Really depends on the car make and model and the quality of the original timing chain. Some GM cars will have timing chain stretch issues at around 80,000 to 100,000 kilometers. So at that moment, you would have to replace your timing chains. But usually with Toyotas, they're really well built, so you could reach that 200,000 kilometers easily with a timing chain, or even up to 250 or 300. But it's just something that you don't wait on for it to break. You kind of replace it preventively, such as the timing chain, such as the timing belt, and as well as the timing chain. All right, so that's going to be it for this short video. Hope you find it helpful. Hope you find it valuable. So, like I said before, these are scenarios that could happen, and you should be aware of them. So, and then the only solution for these is, if your budget allows, you could replace these preventively if you're planning on keeping the car a long time and you don't want any of these scenarios to happen to you. All right, guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.